Trump dismantled the Iranian attempt to push a weak deal onto the United States after suspicions of a Chinese missile behind the downing of the F-15E fighter jet raised bigger questions within the crisis. Was Tehran negotiating peace or just buying time with Beijing's help? On Monday, June 1st, the White House finds itself at the center of a tough decision. Because Trump refused to sign a draft that could ease pressure on the Iranian regime without securing real guarantees about enriched uranium and an end to the military threat. If Iran wanted money, breathing room, and propaganda, now it will have to show whether it accepts serious demands or was just using the agreement as cover. What did China deliver? Why is Iran rushing for relief? How did Trump turn the tables? I'll tell you all about it in a moment. If you like this kind of direct and straightforward content, consider subscribing because we have videos like this every day. The negotiation became tense after American envoys put a proposal for an agreement with Iran on the table, but Trump asked for changes. Axios reported that he ordered tougher terms on enriched uranium stockpiles, future enrichment limits, and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. That was the part that ruined Iran's rush. The regime wanted an open door to breathe. Trump put a lock on the door before handing over any key. Iran came out hurt from the war, pressured by sanctions, damaged infrastructure, internal tension, and fear of social unrest. The regime didn't want a nuclear surrender. It wanted a pause. It wanted time. It wanted money circulating. It wanted to get back in the game without giving up the tool that put the Middle East on alert. Trump noticed this difference. It's one thing to negotiate to prevent a nuclear bomb. It's another thing to accept a truce that lets the opponent reorganize. That's why he didn't treat the draft as a peace prize. He treated it as a test of sincerity. By demanding tougher language, he pushed Iran into a bad choice. Either accept clearer rules about uranium and Hormuz, or reject the text and show that the negotiation was just a maneuver. The suspicion involving the F-15E fighter jet made the decision carry even more weight. Reports citing NBC News said that the American fighter jet shot down over southwestern Iran in April may have been hit by a Chinese portable air defense system. There were also reports that Beijing could have provided long-range radar capable of helping Tehran detect aircraft that are difficult to track. This is still information being treated as intelligence gathering, but the political impact is already enormous. The episode is no longer just a confrontation between the United States and Iran. It has begun to reveal a Chinese shadow behind Iran's capabilities. This point turns the crisis against Tehran. The regime tried to project its own strength, but the suspicion shows dependence. If the missile was Chinese, Iran did not shoot down the American aircraft on its own. It used a foreign component in a regional war. This gives Trump more arguments to toughen his stance, because the negotiating table no longer involves only Iranian promises. It involves the possibility of Beijing fueling the conflict, testing equipment against the United States, and observing the American reaction without putting Chinese soldiers on the ground. The more Washington needs to shift attention, ammunition, air defense, and ships to the Middle East, the more pressure appears on other fronts, such as Taiwan, Japan, Ukraine, and Israel. This is the cold logic of global competition. Beijing doesn't need to declare war to increase the American cost. It's enough to help partners sell technology, gauge the response of the United States, and try to undermine the image of American weapons. Trump understood that signing a weak agreement in this scenario would turn the attack into a reward. The economic pressure explains Iran's haste. The regime knows that war is expensive, that the population feels the burden, and that propaganda doesn't fill the markets, doesn't stabilize the currency, and doesn't rebuild destroyed bases. That's where Trump puts the pressure. He doesn't need to chase a deal at any cost. It's Iran that needs to catch its breath. It's the regime that needs to sell a domestic victory. It's Tehran that needs new money. The recent attacks on Iranian military facilities and the regime's response with missiles also show that the negotiations are happening while the weapons are still hot. Trump said that Iran really wants to make a deal, but at the same time he kept up the pressure. This combination is typical of his strategy, talking without giving up the advantage. The White House is not offering a blank check. It's showing that it can negotiate, strike military targets when necessary, and review every line before signing. The drone part reinforces this interpretation. Iran invested in a low-cost war with Shahed drones and missiles that force expensive defenses to respond. But the United States and its allies are already speeding up cheaper interception solutions, learning from the battlefield in Ukraine. Business Insider showed that the demand for interceptors against drones like those used by Iran and Russia has increased. This shows adaptation. Trump is buying time to adjust defense, reduce the cost per interception, and prevent Tehran from turning cheap swarms into a strategic weapon without a response. The problem for Iran is that each new development complicates its own narrative. If China appears in the wake of the attack against the F-15, Tehran loses the illusion of being an autonomous power and becomes a showcase for Chinese weaponry. The history of Obama's nuclear deal still weighs behind the scenes. Trump built part of his foreign policy by criticizing concessions made to the Iranian regime without any profound change in behavior. Obama's deals with Iran were bad because they were based on a dangerous logic. Instead of definitively dismantling the regime's nuclear structure, they agreed to limit parts of the program for a set period, release billions in funds, and bet that Tehran would behave better after receiving economic relief. The 2015 nuclear deal did not end Iran's nuclear knowledge, did not destroy all of its enrichment apparatus, and did not sufficiently address ballistic missiles. And it still left sunset clauses, allowing important restrictions to expire over time. In addition, during the same period, the Obama administration also made a financial settlement with Iran involving $1.7 billion. This was related to an old arms sale dispute from before the Islamic Revolution, which became a political symbol of concession to a hostile regime. According to Trump's line of thinking, the mistake was simple. Obama gave Iran breathing room, money, and international legitimacy without securing any real change in behavior. The regime continued to fund armed allies, pressure Israel, threaten strategic routes, and maintain its nuclear ambitions as a tool for blackmail. That's why Trump broke with this model in 2018. He saw the agreement as a pause bought by the West, not as a solution. In practice, Iran gained time to breathe internally, negotiate externally, and keep the threat alive. That's why the White House knows that any deal now needs to look different, tougher, more verifiable, and more advantageous for the United States. The left wants to turn the review of clauses into hesitation. Trump's base sees something else. He's preventing the old mistake from coming back in a new form. The suspicion about the Chinese missile has removed any innocence from the negotiation. Clauses. Qualquer inocência da negociação. The agreement now isn't just about countries, it's about who controls the pace of the crisis. I'm Milson Alves, global and internationalist, and my purpose is to keep you well informed with the truth every day. The news links are in the video description. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and at the end, check out the comments so you can be even more engaged with the Milson Alves global community.